Ambassador Polyansky from the Russian Federation delegation to the United Nations. So he's a very busy man these days, and we're very lucky to get him. Excellency, thank you for joining us. Before I turn to what I invited you on to speak about, can I ask if you're in a position to update us on what's happening on the ceasefire resolution on Gaza, which Russia and China and the Arab countries have been trying to hammer out? And I did read that the desperate struggle is for a resolution that the US will not veto. Doesn't that just mean it would be a resolution that if the US would not veto it, it wouldn't be worth having?
Well, thank you for having me, George. Actually, the resolution that we are about to have, and it's not yet guaranteed, is of course quite weak, and we are very disappointed with that. However, it's not in our tradition to comment the internal affairs of Security Council until we haven't gone public on this. I know that the negotiations continue to get some kind of a text which would be acceptable for everybody, which is again not yet guaranteed. So I think that the last postponement, as we were informed, happened today, and we are about to vote tomorrow in the before noon. That's what the Ecuadorian presidency told us. I don't think it's worth waiting any much longer, because the picture is already clear, and very few people believe that there will be a breakthrough in the Security Council. However, it's up to pen holders, and the pen holders in this case are United Arab Emirates, to decide on when to hold the vote, whether to put it to vote or not, whether to withdraw text or not. So that's why we are not in the driver's seat in this case. We were in the driver's seat on several other occasions, but not in this one.
You must be anxious about developments in the Red Sea. Actually, the only shipping that can now pass untrammeled through the Red Sea are Russian tankers. Another victory for Putin, they will say. Everyone else's shipping has more or less stopped. The port of Eilat has ceased operating. The cost of insurance has gone through the roof, so you don't actually have to blockade the Red Sea. It's effectively blockaded itself by the existence of a conflict there. Now, President Biden has assembled an armada from the likes of the Seychelles, Netherlands, Bahrain. Those mighty navies are steaming towards the Red Sea. How concerned are you that if war breaks out between this not so grand coalition and the armed forces of Yemen, that it will drag in Iran and thus drag in all the friends of Iran? How concerned are you in New York about that?
Well, we're quite concerned, and of course, let's try to bar hypothetical scenario, but we discussed this issue in the Security Council in close consultations. So on the one hand, we absolutely share the necessity to provide freedom of maritime navigation there, and we joined the others in the press statement of the UN Security Council, calling on Houthis to not to make such steps. On the other hand, we warned that any kind of force reply by force in such circumstances risk bringing the situation further to the brink of confrontation, and this is the scenario that we want to avoid. We also understand that of course what's happening there is a reflection of situation in Gaza, and the more situation there aggravates, the more chance that the situation in Yemen and around the Red Sea will also become quite problematic.
Well, all Yemen are doing is applying economic sanctions of the kind so beloved by the empire in so many theaters, including against Russia, I may say. They're saying that you are massacring Palestinian children, so we will not allow your ships or any ships going to or from your ports to pass through our Red Sea. Most people in the world think that's rather a noble thing.
Well, there is certain logic, of course, there if you look at this from Middle Eastern and Yemeni perspective, but we also should look at this from the perspective of world trade routes and safety of passage and safety of navigation. There are certain commitments of all the countries, and what is happening there is very dangerous, and we certainly do not support this kind of actions, though again we intend to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture implies also the situation in Gaza, and we think that we need to concentrate there and to solve this issue. When this issue is solved, it will be easier to solve the issue in Red Sea for sure.
Let me turn then to what I did want to talk to you about, Ukraine. Blinken said this evening that the Christmas presents in the post for Ukraine will be the last. This is rather a significant statement because it was preceded for the last nearly 2 years with as long as it takes, we'll do anything that is necessary and so on. So the United States, logjam in Congress, the parlous state of their economy and finances, but perhaps above all, they're turning away to another theater of conflict in which they're deeply involved, namely the Middle East and West Asia. Do you think, what do you think the main impact will be on the war in Ukraine, the special military operation, of effectively the pulling of the plugs by the United States, and one presumes its vassal states also?
Well, I think that we shouldn't concentrate too much on the issue of whether the money, the help will be given to Ukraine or will it not be given, in what quantities. Frankly, we do not calculate, we do not count somebody else's money. We only calculate them and count in Security Council when it comes to the discussion on how many good and noble things could have been done with this kind of financing in the world. That's the only way we compare the volumes that US and other allies are spending for arms and not for development. And this is not only us. As for the Ukrainian situation, well, I understand that at some point of time maybe there will be a decision on some additional money for Ukraine, some additional weapons. But the issue is bigger, and the issue is that everybody understands that it is not making the difference in the battlefield. So enormous money was spent in Ukraine, enormous amount of armaments were sent to Ukraine. It didn't help Ukraine prevail as everybody was hoping, though de facto the whole NATO bloc is now behind Ukraine. But the problem is not for Ukraine is not in arms now. The problem is in people. Because the people don't want to fight. That's quite clear. They didn't want to fight from day one, but there were some nationalists and some people who were very much determined to fight for Kiev regime. Now it's very difficult to find really those who want to fight for Kiev regime. We all see the films, the video reels about forced conscription, which is already being named forced conscription to the grave by the Ukrainian society. So people are avoiding this because people are very much disappointed and disenchanted in Zelensky and his regime. He promised one thing when he came to power in 2019. He promised equal rights to Russian speakers and the others. He promised respect for their national, historic, cultural identity. He promised to bring peace through Minsk agreements with his compatriots in the East. He deceived all the voters who voted for them, and they voted massively. 75% was his support. So he did everything to the contrary what he promised, and he just made his country a geopolitical tool of the US, a geopolitical pawn at the chessboard, and his countrymen as cannon fodder for the US and NATO interests. People understand this, people see this, and that's why There are no more volunteers in Ukraine, and they now acknowledge this fact. People don't want to fight. So no matter how many armaments, how many money you would send to war in Ukraine, the problem in Ukraine is the fatigue, and the problem is the disenchantment, the fact that the people of Ukraine now understand who is their real enemy, and that's not Russia, that's the Kiev regime and Zelensky.
In normal times, abnormal times too, I mean, I'm thinking of the Stauffenberg plot to destroy the top of the Hitler regime. When a dictatorship like the one Zelensky now leads begins to lose, and its people lose faith in the way that you have described, the devil finds work for idle hands, we may say. It's quite likely that the tensions between Zelensky and Zaluzhny, Zelensky and the mayor of Kiev, the world champion boxer, this may break into a fight, no?
Well, they are like spiders in a box. So we of course read these news sources, but I don't think we count on this. Our president repeatedly confirmed that the aims and the goals of our special military operation remain in force, and we are continuing to implement them through military means as long as there are no meaningful negotiations. And of course, Ukraine is not ready for meaningful negotiations. You know that Zelensky himself banned himself from any negotiations with Russian government by adopting a law more than 1 year ago. So it's ridiculous to speak about any negotiations. They had opportunity to get quite a good deal last April, but they were talked out of this deal by UK and by the US. Now, of course, they regret it very much. It's quite visible because they will never get anything even comparable to this in such circumstances. But what can they do? I frankly do not know their strategy, and it's not our intention to look so much at Ukraine, what they are doing, how they are fighting, who will be there. We are fighting there with the neo-Nazi regime, Russophobic regime, which was installed not by Zelensky himself. It was installed by the anti-constitutional coup in 2014. So Zelensky came to power when people believed that he would change anything, when they were disappointed in Poroshenko, and they chose Zelensky. So now they are disappointed in Zelensky. I don't know who can deliver on the promises that he made, for sure not him, but it's up to Ukrainians to decide. We continue the implementation of the forces of the tasks of our special military operation, demilitarization of Ukraine. First of all, we already completed this goal, but the West provides Ukraine with more and more arms, which are being destroyed. Denazification of Ukraine, which is also a very important thing, because we can't tolerate a neo-Nazi state at our borders, the regime at our borders. It was absolutely clear from the outset. There are other goals like the rights of Russia.
I was making the point in a way about the philosophy now behind the special military operation. Its demands were clear enough, its goals were clear enough. But recently, both you and, even more importantly, President Putin himself have, as it were, begun to think out loud. So President Putin was talking yesterday about the Russian people in other parts of the east and the south of Ukraine. And I'm one who believed that all of this effort will not have been made just to stop at the Dnipro. That places like Odessa, which are manifestly Russian cities, Russian Jewish citadels actually, and many other parts right along the coast, are effectively parts of Russia that were given away, ironically, effectively by the Soviet Union back in the day. Because let's remind people, Kiev itself used to be the capital of Russia. This was all Russia. The word Ukraine means the borderlands. So are we on the on the cusp of an ingathering of all the Russian-speaking people in Ukraine. And that will, of course, change the map of Western Ukraine very considerably indeed.
Well, George, of course, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't have the exact plans of our special military operation, as you might imagine. So we have very professional military people who are planning this, judging on the resources on the ground, judging on the situation. What I can tell you is, first of all, of course, there are a lot of people, I would say very many people in Odessa, in Kiev, in other places in Ukraine, who are waiting for us, and it's not a secret. They are making appeals, and I would say that the Ukrainian propaganda initially, it was speaking about some kind of guerrilla movement in the territories if they would be taken by Russia, as they put it. So look at the new regions of Russia. There is no guerrilla movement. There are only the sabotage groups which are being sent by Kiev and which are being neutralized because of the cooperation of local citizens. This is a big disappointment for Kiev regime. So people there in our new territories absolutely support Russia. I'm absolutely sure that the support will be at the same level in the other regions of Ukraine. The question is that this war was never about territory. It's a big mistake to think that we were after Ukraine because of territory, because we wanted Ukraine to be Russified, we wanted to do away with the Ukrainian language. This is not true. So it all started to protect Russian-speaking population in the east, in Donbass, which was heavily shelled on the eve of our special military operation. There were hundreds of thousands of refugees coming to Moscow, to other cities, to Rostov. So that was the initial moment. Nobody was thinking about territories, about some kind of inclusion of new regions in Russia. That was not the plan. But of course, the plans are being adopted with the course of special military operation. And we all see now, it's quite clear when you read Ukrainian telegram channels and Russian telegram channels, which is the main source of information for me, for example, about special military operation. You see that the Ukrainian front is about to crumble. It's about to crumble in the stronghold of this front near Donetsk, in Avdiivka, in Marinka. These strongholds were built for several years. They are very heavily armed and fortified, and it will be a big turning point in the whole campaign when these strongholds will be liberated. And I also can refer to the statements of President Putin and other Russian leaders that we will have to push Ukrainian troops back to the places from where they will not be able to threaten Russian territory and to threaten our citizens and to threaten our lands. So all this combined, I think, give certain reasons to those who believe that the special military operation will be continued towards Kiev, towards Odessa, towards other cities. I don't want to speculate on this because it implies the life of many people, and it implies also the ardent work of my compatriots who are there on the battlefield. But I think that this is the expectation for everyone, that this threat from Ukraine should be neutralized, that there should never be any threat from these lands to Russia, and there shouldn't be any policy of this kind towards Russian-speaking population and the Russian people. So I think that that's what I can say about this situation today.
Now I don't know if it was a speech, the text of a speech or an article that I wrote from you, but I thought it was particularly profound, if I may say so. It talked about what is necessary as a security infrastructure, or architecture rather, for the future. And you made the point that what's needed is not NATO versus Russia. It is all of Europe, including Europe's largest country, Russia. All of Europe having a security architecture amongst themselves, where no one on the European continent will or can threaten the security of any other part of the continent. Develop your ideas for us, if you will.
Well, it's not my ideas, frankly. It's something that is within our foreign policy concept, that the concept of indivisible European security. And you know that on the eve of our special military operation, we reached out to NATO, we reached out to Washington, proposing the draft treaties on European security, which were condescendingly rejected by Washington and by Brussels. And that was our last attempt to come to a certain deal, which was, of course, include the provision of Ukraine remaining neutral and not joining NATO. The biggest mistake that our European neighbors are doing right now, at least some of them, I see that there are more and more sobering voices in these countries, but still, they somehow try to build security architecture against Russia and not within Russia. And this is a very, very big mistake. I think this leads us nowhere, and that does not eliminate all the possible reasons for conflicts and for threats in the European continent. So we were long advocating this notion of indivisible security, when security of one state is not being provided at the expense of the security of the other. It's very simple, but NATO doesn't fit in this picture, at least in the way it is right now. NATO is an alliance which initially was perceived having Russia as an enemy or as an adversary, to put it mildly. That's why, of course, we will have inevitably, after the end of the Ukrainian crisis, we will inevitably have to wage discussions on European security, because otherwise, of course, the continent will remain very much fragile. And if the security of European continent will be provided at the expense of Russian interests and with direct threats to Russian interests, I don't think it will be a sustainable construction that will be favorable for every nation on the continent, not only Russia.
Ambassador, thanks for joining us. Sorry about the numerous interruptions in our discussion. Very good of you to join us on a very, very busy night.